It is episode 136 of Decoding Fox News, and I'm your host, Juliet Jeske. Each week, I watch and analyze a whole heck of a lot of Fox News and then break it down. Last week, it was 19 hours of Fox News. Oh my goodness, and what a week, because I was sick as a dog. Still a little sick, but not that sick. Voice is almost back, not completely. But yes, the headline. Still a little out of it. I fell asleep. I wrote this thing. I got all my audio clips done. I was like, I got this. Let's do this. And then I fell asleep. That's where I'm at right now. Still not completely back. But here we go. Fox News. Kamala's got to get that bro vote.
That's why Obama told the brothers, if you don't vote for Kamala, you ain't black. And you're sexist. Obama lecturing the brothers. Kamala is not exactly sending her best. Kamala Harris has an issue with the brothers. Her VP's wooing white dudes, and Obama's scolding the brothers. Barack's lecturing the brothers, and Obama said Kamala isn't doing well with the brothers. So, number one, how do you prove you're black? I'm 0.1%. Do I qualify?
So I'd love to sit Jesse Waters down and ask, hi, hello, how are you? I know you're originally from the Philadelphia area. I'm sure you grew up in a posh suburb. Your grandfather, on your mother's side, was the publisher of Better Homes and Gardens magazine. It's true. And his great-grandfather was the publisher of the Saturday Evening Post. So I'm sure he grew up with nothing. Jesse, I'm being sarcastic here. And he also has a grandfather who was a heart surgeon or cardiologist, something like that. I'm sure he scraped and struggled. That is sarcasm. Okay, so Jesse Waters, white person from an affluent suburb, I'm assuming, who went to Trinity College. He makes fun of Trinity College all the time. He's made fun of it multiple times for being kind of a lesser school because he's a lesser... And he also, I will give him this, he admits to not being very bright. He has done that many times. I will tip of the hat, Jesse Waters. But why on earth are you pronouncing the brothers in like a veiled, kind of subtle way to try to sound like you're using black vernacular? The brothers. What are you doing? You racist piece of garbage. I would love to have Jesse Waters' mother on play that and say, why is he pronouncing the brothers like that? Why is he doing that? Please explain. Why is he referring to black men as brothers as a white person? That's really offensive and rude. But if Fox really wants to lure more black men over to the Republican Party, you're doing a great job with putting a racist on television who uses demeaning language like that, who is openly mocking people. That's a great way to do it. More sarcasm. I can't even handle this. Like there's a saying, when your enemy is making a mistake, don't tell them. I shouldn't have pointed this out to Fox. I should just say, you know what, Fox? He needs a show called Jesse Waters on Black People. Let me talk about black people on Jesse Waters. Better yet, he could say, I'm one of the brothers because I have 0.1% sub-Saharan African DNA. Someone tried to say that maybe it wasn't black DNA because it was African, it was Egyptian. No. He specifically said it's sub-Saharan. I just couldn't include that in the tweet because there's a character count. So yes, come up with a show called I'm Black Too with Jesse Waters. I'm one of the brothers with 0.1% sub-Saharan African DNA. And he can talk about the black community. I think that would be brilliant, Fox. Put that on the air. We could do 2 hours of Jesse Waters. Just remove Laura Ingraham. She won't mind. Put her on at 11. Take Fox News at night. Put Laura Ingraham on at 11. First hour of Jesse Waters is I'm Black Like You. Jesse Waters, you'll get so many new, black voters into the Republican Party. I've got another tip for the Fox News executives. How about, just for fun, giving Jesse Waters an entire staff of women under 30? I think it would go brilliantly. You're definitely not going to end up with a sexual harassment lawsuit. Oh, no. Goodness, no. No. And he could get a dating show out of it. I think it'll be great. How to Cheat on Wife Number 2 with Wife Number 3. The Intern. Okay, sorry. I can't. I got to hold it back. Here we go. Last week on Fox News, the 2024 election was reduced to a battle to win over one of the smallest voting demographics in the American electorate. Black men, a group normally loyal to the Democratic Party. The network also ramped up fear of the emasculating left by pushing stories of trans female athletes and government programs that pay for gender-affirming surgeries for prisoners. Kamala Harris was presented as an evil shrew, while Tim Walz was an ineffective effeminate, even though he's been a highly successful politician since he flipped a Republican Congressional district blue and rose to the highest office in the state of Minnesota. While Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld declared that no real man could vote for Harris, Lawrence Jones predicted a new groundswell of support for Trump among black men. Fox News personalities presented the young male vote as the tipping point for either candidate's success, even though the most reliable voting demographic in the United States is women over the age of 45. We'll get to that later. As Fox promoted right-leaning polls as proof of a Trump landslide, no one acknowledged that most polls predicted much larger wins for Republicans in the midterms and off-year election, which is true. Anyone watching Fox News exclusively last week might have missed out on stories involving Chinese military operations surrounding Taiwan, a climate disaster in Southeast Asia, and a labor strike in Italy. Shows I covered last week. Fox and Friends, all 3 hours on Friday to catch Trump's appearance. The 5, Jesse Waters Primetime. The Faulkner Focus, that was on Wednesday to get the Trump Town Hall. And special report with Brett Baer to get the Kamala Harris interview. I wanted to do a bonus podcast with both of them kind of combined, but I was just too sick last week. I managed to get the print versions out for paid subscribers. Thank you for everybody who read them. They performed very well. I just could barely function. In order to catch up for this week, this is why this gig is so hard, because you can't stop. I had to marathon, no joke, 17 hours of Fox News this weekend. 17 hours. So, because really all I could handle was catching up with last week, and then the previous week, and then getting those 2 specials, which I did spend a lot of time on. The Trump Town Hall and the Kamala Harris interview on Brett Baer, which was, okay. They acted like he hit it out of the park. And I'm like, really? Because she looked pretty good. Sorry. It's funny because Fox acted like that was just a home run for them. And then the days that followed, there was some correction of that. It was, well, Brett Baer did play the wrong clip. And, well, he didn't mean to talk over her and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, okay, Brett Baer is trying to save what you had left of your legitimacy is burned to cinders. So sorry, dear. Sorry, dear. Sorry. First section, what do women voters really want? This is from Wednesday, the same day as the Trump all-women town hall on the Faulkner Focus. This is from Fox and Friends. It's the cast sitting down to discuss what women voters really want. And this is kind of an interesting play here, how they volley this topic.
But in terms of what women care about, they care about the economy, 23%, abortion, 21%, immigration, 11%, character, 8%, inflation, 5%, and the state of democracy, 5%. Lastly is healthcare, which I was shocked at, taxes, and then crime. So this is what I guess the president's got to focus on.
Well, the president was talking about sanctuary cities. He's going to end sanctuary cities. Kamala Harris has supported them. She's promised to decriminalize the illegals that come across our border. She wants to abolish ICE. She did away with building that wall like we talked about and remain in Mexico. She wants to pay for housing and education and food for illegals. Under Biden and Harris, 8.3 million went across our border. Under Trump, 2.4.
Right.
So what's interesting there, just to break this up a little bit, is that Brian Kilmeade goes through this whole list. Immigration, according to Brian Kilmeade's list, which he doesn't cite, he never says what poll that is, immigration was only at 11% and crime was at the very bottom. Then, Ansley Einhart just picks it up and just decides that immigration and sanctuary cities, she implies crime, is the number one issue for women, which Trump is constantly implying that, which I don't think it is either. Now, here is Steve Doocy kind of giving them a dose of reality.
And Brian, number two on the list that you just went through after the economy, number two is, and it's pretty close, is abortion. And Donald Trump was asked yesterday about the U.S. Supreme Court and how his the justices that he nominated for the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. And what he said essentially was that ultimately, and the question was, why is the government involved in women's basic rights? And he said, and we've heard this before, it is right for each and every one of the individual states to decide what happens in that state.
So
now, Steve Doocy sort of stammered there a bit, but I'm going to actually read his actual words. Here we go. And he said, and we've heard it before, it is right for the each and every one of the individual states, kind of bad grammar there. So he says, it is the right for the each and every one of the individual states to decide what happens in that state. So he's basically saying, as clear as day, the state has more right than the individual. The state of Texas or the state of Georgia or the state of Florida has more right than the individual. And in only some cases are state governments allowing this to be open to referendum, meaning voters can just vote straight up, we want abortion or we don't want abortion. In every case where that's happened all over the country, including in incredibly red states, voters have chosen abortion. They've said, we think people should decide this, not the state. So at the moment, what you're dealing with are state legislatures who were voted on at whatever point they were voted on. Some of these had laws locked in that the minute Roe v. Wade was overturned, they basically criminalized or made abortion inaccessible or illegal automatically. And so people really didn't have a right to say, wait a second. And in Missouri, they might. We'll see. Missouri, I grew up in Missouri, is a very, very, very conservative, hardcore anti-abortion state. At least on paper it is. We'll see if voters actually think it is when they get a chance to vote on this. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So anyway, I just thought that was very interesting. And I think Doocy would be right. Because again, we go back to the midterm election and the off-year election. And in both cases, abortion played a huge role in who won those races. So we'll see what happens. I think the gender issue is going to be a very big deal in this election. I do believe that. So our next clip is from the Trump town hall with the all-female audience or all-woman audience, however you want to say it, that he had with Harris Faulkner hosting. She was moderating it. And it was kind of insane because half the questions were actually asked by Harris Faulkner, not audience members. And CNN, who had a reporter there, and Midas Touch both figured out very quickly that the audience was all Trump supporters, or mostly Trump supporters, and that Republican groups got together and packed the house. That was not unusual for me to see because that's literally how every single Breakfast with Friends segment works. Where they, we're going to talk to people in a diner in Michigan, and every single person in the diner's got a Trump hat on. Because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, Fox promotes these things. The Fox fans who are all retired have nothing else to do, so they get all excited. They get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. They go to these diners in their finery, and they're like, yay, we're going to be on Fox and Friends. And that's what they do. And then they're like, oh, we go to the diners, and this is what people say. I'm like, yeah, to your very specific audience. So this is how CNN did it. They had a reporter there at this town hall, so Fox was letting press in. Because, they try to present it as these are just voters in Georgia, women voters in Georgia. So according to reporting by CNN, the first question posed to Trump at the town hall came from a woman identified as Lisa. The network did not disclose that Lisa is also the president of the Fulton County Republican Women Group. A CNN reporter at the event also had an audio recording of the entire town hall that included remarks that Fox News did not include in its broadcast. In one example, a woman identified as Alicia said, "I proudly cast my vote today for you today. I hope they count it." She's directing that towards Trump. Fox producers also removed a moment when the crowd chanted in unison, "Trump, Trump, Trump." And they were quick to note in the article that that comment of, "I proudly cast my vote for you today, I hope they count it," was not made at the end of her statement, where they normally would clip something for time. It was in the middle of her statement. There's so many ways to do this. If you take the camera and you put it back on Trump or on Harris Faulkner, you can make an edit and not notice it. It's a real easy way. One of the ways you can tell if something's been edited is if the camera moves off of the person speaking. If they have the camera on somebody talking, and they're like, I'm talking, and then all of a sudden you see another person, there might be a reason why they did that. They do that also to just mix it up. But if you see the camera break off of the person talking and show the reaction of someone, there could be an edit there. That's a real easy way for a video editor to make a cut and not have you notice it. I work with video all day. I know every trick in the book. And in audio, it's really easy to make a cut in audio and not have the audience know that you made a cut. But in video, it's much trickier because you have an image. The image is speaking. How do you make a cut and not have a jump cut where it's very obvious that there was an edit? You just pull the image away. You show something else. You go back to the image. Boom. There you go. Well, this is a clip from the very beginning of the town hall, and Harris Faulkner sort of describes what's happening here. So I don't want to waste time. I'll let her talk through what's happening.
And I cannot believe how people come for you already. I don't know if you know this, but early voting is a sign that people are coming out, as you know, but it's also a sign that there might be a few people who have something to say. So I want to share with you Senators Warnock and Ossoff, Mayor Bottoms and Atlanta Mayor Bottoms, and Amber Thurman's family have come out on a press call, and they're doing what's called a pre-buttal to our town hall right now.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and I want to
get better ratings, I promise.
So this pre-buttal was two Georgia senators and the former mayor of Atlanta. From what I could tell, she's the former mayor of Atlanta, and the family of a woman named Amber Thurman. Trump just turned it into a joke, saying, I'll get better ratings. He probably will, because it's a press call. It's not on television. That's not that difficult to get better ratings than a press call, but he makes it into a joke. Haha, so funny. There's no acknowledgement by Harris Faulkner of who Amber Thurman is. And she actually mispronounces her first name. She kind of butchers it. So according to a ProPublica report, in 2022, Amber Thurman traveled to North Carolina to receive reproductive care since abortion was banned after 6 weeks in her home state of Georgia. She was given abortion medication, which resulted in a life-threatening complication, very rare complication. By the time Thurman was experiencing a medical emergency, she was back in Georgia. A dilation in clitoris, or DNC, would have saved her life if it was performed early enough. Normally, DNCs are routinely given after miscarriages or abortions when a portion of the fetal tissue remains inside the uterus. The draconian anti-abortion laws in Georgia made performing the procedure a felony in most cases, so doctors waited 20 hours until Thurman was near death to operate. By then it was too late, as the infection caused from the remaining fetal tissue had spread throughout her body, killing her. Amber Thurman was only 28 years old when she died. She was also a mother to a 6-year-old son. It's not funny. Trump can laugh all he wants. But women who know the story of Amber Thurman and know what happened to her are not going to find that humorous. And they're going to come out to vote. And they're going to come out to vote in Georgia, and they're going to come out to vote in North Carolina, and they're going to come out to vote in Wisconsin, and they're going to come out to vote in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Nevada and Arizona. Arizona has abortion on the ballot. We'll see if that affects the outcome of the entire election. It seemed to in the midterm election and the off-year election, where, again, pollsters were off. They predicted a red wave in the midterm that didn't really happen. It was kind of a red, certainly not a wave. And the off-year election where they predicted Virginia's legislature would go red and all of this. No, it was a very good year for Democrats. Now, I will say one thing that they've already seen in data, in states that have these incredibly extreme restrictions on abortion and reproductive care. There's already been an increase in maternal death rates and infant mortality rates. And that's happened all over the place. And if you look at countries, entire countries that have criminalized abortion completely, like El Salvador, what you'll see is not only do you see increases in infant mortality, maternal death rates, suicide among young women, and this is just incredibly tragic, women who've had miscarriages are prosecuted as if they've had an abortion and end up in prison. And usually that scenario starts with a woman who's pregnant, who has a miscarriage. Her ex-husband, ex-boyfriend, whatever, gets angry, claims she's had a miscarriage, an abortion. And because most miscarriages happen at home or happen you don't plan them, they just happen. It's difficult at that point for the woman to prove that she did not do anything to cause the miscarriage. And miscarriages are incredibly common. There's estimates that it's anywhere from 10 to 30% of all pregnancies. So horrible. And you also, unfortunately, and I hate even talking about this, but in countries that have extreme restrictions on abortions, you have examples of 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds being forced to give birth to the babies of their rapists, in some cases relatives who have raped them. So incest survivors being forced to give birth at age 10. So yeah, not something to laugh about, Donald J. Trump. And I don't even know if he knows who Amber Thurman is. I bet if somebody asked him, if a reporter said, hey, who's Amber Thurman, he would have no clue. Because it's not about him. He doesn't care. So this next clip is a bit more lighthearted. This is Trump from Fox and Friends on Friday. They had this bizarro, instead of him calling in, they had him come into the studio. And they sat him at the very end of the curvy couch, which is the huge, large, it's like a moon-shaped, half-shaped, I don't know how you call it. It's like half-round, whatever, couch on Fox and Friends. And bizarrely, he looked very small, which is very, just the way the lines were for this thing. They made him look little, which is bizarro. And he was sitting on his jacket, even though it did look like a pad. But if you watch the whole clip, you see him from standing to sitting, and they didn't put anything underneath him. But anyway, and it was a very strange appearance by him. It seemed a little desperate. So at one point, Brian Kilmeade brings up Nikki Haley voters. And I included this because we're talking about either male voters or female voters. And of course, this would be, both voters, but it's a female candidate. And this is what Trump says.
There's a segment of the Republican Party that likes Nikki Haley, and they are reluctant to jump into your column. She wants to help. She said, if he calls me, I'm there. You guys used to be tight. In the last 18 days, will you call her and say, come out with me?
Yeah, I'll do what I have to do. But let me just tell you, Nikki Haley and I fought, and I beat her by 50, 60, 90 points. I beat her in her own state by numbers that nobody's ever been beaten by. I beat Nikki badly. I beat everyone else, too, badly. Frankly, I set records, both in speed and in the magnitude of the win. And everybody keeps saying that. They don't say get Ron, and Ron did very well. But again, I beat everybody by numbers that have never happened before. And they keep talking about Nikki. I like Nikki. Nikki, I don't think should have done what she did, and that's fine that she did it. But even in her own state, in South Carolina, where she was the governor, I beat her by a number that nobody ever heard, by 50 points or something. And then they say, oh, when is Nikki coming back in? Nikki is in. Nikki is helping us already. But it's just, people keep saying, when are you bring? They don't say, when are you bringing this one? Everybody is in, and Nikki is already in. She's out campaigning.
So amazingly, Trump could have just simply said, oh, she's part of the campaign. She's on board. We're happy to have those Nikki Haley voters. No, instead, he takes the opportunity to bash her at length and then brag about how he outperformed her. He brings up Ron DeSantis, which Ron DeSantis did not do very well. Nikki Haley stayed in for several states and was, even after she dropped out, weeks after she dropped out, she was still polling like 20% in some of these states. And he acts like that's insignificant and completely trashes her and talks about himself. It's amazing, the self-sabotage with her. That was an easy one. That was a layup. Just say, I think Nikki Haley's great. We've made it up. There's no strife between us. We're happy to have her as part of the campaign. Boom. Moving on. Instead, he trashes her. It's just, it's hard to even wrap your head around that. So before we move on to the next clip, I think I should give a shout out to my sponsor since we're about halfway through. And who might that sponsor be? Well, I do not have a large donor or benefactor or advertiser. I am 100% supported by the listeners of this podcast and the readers of my newsletter. Thank you so much. I just got a new little crop of new paid subscribers. I always appreciate it. I had some renewals, people who've been with Decoding Fox News for 2 years. A woman just sent me a lovely note today saying how she's been a supporter for 2 years. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I could not do it without you. If you'd like to become a paid subscriber to Decoding Fox News, you can go to my Substack for Decoding Fox News or Patreon for Decoding Fox News. All paid subscribers and paid supporters get exclusive content. Last week it was 3 things that I sent out to the paid subscribers. It varies from week to week. And who knows what it'll be this week. I'm hoping to get something together again for Project 2025. If you can't afford to become a paid subscriber or paid supporter, you can share this podcast with your friends, share the newsletter, tell everybody you know. That also helps tremendously. Also to give me a good review wherever you get this podcast. I should mention before I move on, because somebody has said, thank you for mentioning this before. There's a linked tree that takes you to all of my links on all of my social media accounts. That's part of my Twitter bio. That also includes a Venmo. So if you just want to do a one-time donation to Decoding Fox News, you can do it that way. So moving on, we're moving on to, this is another issue. I thought it was odd that somehow transgender people became a major topic last week, where they were either working in some story about a transgender athlete or as they put it, and this is the language they used, they call it sex change operations paid for by taxpayers. That's exactly how they put it. Taxpayer-funded sex change operations for inmates. Now, Trump has made this a huge part of his campaign, and they spent a lot of money on ads about this. Now, it affects a tiny, tiny, tiny group of people. Tiny. Very small. Looked into this. Tiny. And so far there's been one case of an inmate receiving gender-affirming surgery. That's the preferable way to describe what they are calling sex change operations or taxpayer-funded sex change operations. Now, this is Ansley Ainhart discussing this, and I joked on Twitter that she needs to go back and rewatch some Schoolhouse Rock episodes, specifically the I'm Just a Bill. Now, I don't want to say any more than that because I might get into a copyright issue, but can't sing it. Even if I sing it, I could get in a copyright issue. So I won't. But yes, probably the best known episode of that series is the I'm Just a Bill episode that shows a little bill made into law. And it shows how complicated and difficult that process is. So here's Ansley Ainhart. This is from Thursday from Fox and Friends.
I mean, she keeps saying, I'll follow the law. I'll follow the law in the gender transitioning surgeries and prison. I'll follow the law when it comes to the border. Well, you have access to the law if you're the vice president. If you're running for president and you become president, you can change the laws. Right. There are executive orders, and they did away with most of Donald Trump's executive orders when it came to immigration.
So I have a theory. Before I break down what she said, this is my theory. Because I'm like, why is this such a huge issue for Republicans? They can't bash gay people as aggressively as they used to. They realize that's a losing battle. Too many people have, openly gay people in their families and friends, and they just can't get away with that anymore. But trans people, it's a smaller group. It's easier to make them the other. It's easier to mock them. Weirdly, to combine drag queens with them, which that's not related, not always. Sometimes you can be a drag queen and trans, but most drag queens are not. They're, gay men who get in a costume. Anybody can be a drag queen. So I just but in most cases, it's a gay man who's getting into a costume. In most cases. There's variations. It's hard to make a blanket statement about drag queens. But strangely, Fox News and the right-wing media have combined those two things and demonized them. But I think it boils down to the idea that the left, that the woke left, is going to emasculate you to a point that you're going to cease being a man. That your son will not be a boy or a man when he grows up because the left, the woke left, will get to him and cause him to change his gender or his sex, however you want to put that. I have no idea. It's bizarre that they make this into like a major, major issue. Because it's a tiny group of people. So here we go. But let's break down what she said. She says that she can change the laws, that as vice president or president can change the law. No. Executive orders are not laws. Only members of Congress can start the process to introduce a bill. This is from whitehouse.gov. And I've truncated the heck out of this. The first step in the legislative process is the introduction of a bill to Congress. Anyone can write it, but only members of Congress can introduce legislation. A bill must pass both houses of Congress before it goes to the president for consideration. If the president agrees substantially with the bill, he or she may sign it into law, and then the bill is printed in the statutes at large. If the president believes the law to be bad policy, he or she may veto it and send it back to Congress. Congress may override the veto with a two-thirds vote of each chamber, at which point the bill becomes a law and is printed. Executive orders are limited in scope and can be challenged in court. They can also be rescinded with the stroke of a pen by the next president. Vice presidents cannot issue executive orders, so they're not laws. They're not laws. They're closer to a regulation. They're not laws. They're just too weak. They're too weak. The New York Times, and they very explicitly, when you look this up, it says this is not a law. So somebody tried to challenge me on that on Substack. Do not waste my time. I've quadruple checked this. Executive orders are not considered laws. They may act like a law briefly, but if I can just get rid of it with one signature, that's not a law, because you can't do that to a law. Trump wrote a lot of executive orders, and on day one, Joe Biden, with literally, again, like I said, one stroke of his pen, knocked them all out, rescinded most of them. Some of them he waited a minute and then rescinded them, but he rescinded most of them because executive orders are weak. So moving on, the reason why Ansley Einhart was talking about this is because Kamala Harris, in her interview with Bret Baier, when she was challenged by Bret Baier about this super ultra important topic, which I don't think it is to most Americans, about prisoners receiving gender affirming surgeries, she said, well, the same thing happened under Trump. And she didn't say surgery specifically, but she said gender affirming care also happened under Trump. She is correct. So the New York Times published an article that night addressing the claim Harris made during her interview with Bret Baier. The Trump administration offered gender affirming care for prisoners. And this is their quote. Trump appointees at the Bureau of Prisons, a division of the Justice Department, provided an array of gender affirming treatments, including hormone therapy, for a small group of inmates who requested it during Mr. Trump's 4 years in office. A Congressional Research Service memo dated August 26, 2020, titled Health Care for Federal Prisoners, stated the Bureau of Prisons provides medically necessary health care treatment to all prisoners housed in the Bureau of Prisons operated facilities. So here's the breakdown. In 2022, Cristina Nicole Iglesias became the first person to receive gender-affirming surgery while in federal custody. Iglesias sought the gender-affirming surgery in January 2016, but the Trump administration fought her request. So these things take time, and by the time Trump was in power, he tried to block it. In 2019, Iglesias sued the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and a federal court found in her favor in 2021. From a statement issued by the ACLU of Illinois, where this happened, it happened in Illinois. Miss Iglesias has been in federal custody for 28 years and lives in a Bureau of Prisons residential reentry center in Florida. The Bureau of Prisons has known that Miss Iglesias is transgender since she first arrived in federal custody in 1994 and identified as a woman. Since then, she has been denied basic medical care to treat her gender dysphoria and was housed in men's facilities for over 2 decades, where she experienced severe physical and sexual violence. In May 2021, this lawsuit resulted in Ms. Iglesias being one of the few transgender people ever moved to a federal prison that aligns with her gender. So this is a very specific case. This is not someone who was arrested, was in prison for 20 years and thought, guess what? I'm transgender. Although that has happened. This is somebody who they knew when she was incarcerated that she identified as a woman. And she went through this horrible ordeal of being put in a men's prison. I don't know what she did, but we do have laws against cruel and unusual punishment in the United States. It's one of the amendments of the Bill of Rights. So we shouldn't be torturing people on top of the fact that we have them incarcerated. It doesn't really matter what she did as a crime. She's serving her time. She had a trial. She had due process. She's serving her time. That is not the issue. The issue is, don't put me in a male's prison. I want gender affirming surgery. Again, very specific case. Oh my goodness. And they're one person, and they're flipping out over this. Just unbelievable. So on Wednesday, Jesse Waters invited Hulk Hogan, the professional wrestler, on to talk about women's role in the home. And I was like, I wondered out loud, are you trying to actively repel women voters? Is that what you're doing here? So here's the clip.
Well, brother, at the end of the day, this is chain of command, our Lord and Savior, the wife and the husband and the kids. And at the end of the day, the mother is to nourish, but the man is to protect, serve, and provide. So at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, is being a real man, being a real American, and getting this country and making it not how it used to be, but how it should be, brother.
So some quick background on Hulk Hogan. That's not his legal name, but we'll call him that because that's his stage name. That's what he's known for. Hulk Hogan's wife divorced him after he had an affair with his daughter's best friend. She also accused him of physical abuse during their marriage. Hogan is currently on his 3rd marriage. He was also fired from World Wrestling Entertainment after he made several racist comments, including the N-word, during a sex tape Hogan made with the then wife of his friend, DJ Bubba the Love Sponge Clem. So that's the person we're talking about here. Okay, that'll get the women voters, definitely. Just scold us and talk down to us and then have that background. Anyway, moving on. This is Jessica Tarloff summing up the week because I kept screaming this at my computer and she just said it out loud. Here we go. This is from Wednesday, the 5.
It's getting a little exhausting to hear about Kamala's crisis with men constantly when Donald Trump's crisis with women is bigger and women vote in higher numbers than men do.
So as we look at the polls that are alarming right now, because they're tightening, remember the midterm, remember the off-year election, and remember what Jessica Tarloff just said. Kamala Harris has an advantage with women. Women vote in higher numbers than men. And I looked this up. So according to a study by the Center for American Women and Politics at Rutgers, New Brunswick Eagleton Institute of Politics, women have consistently voted more than men since at least 1964, with the gender gap widening in recent elections. And I included a graph, a beautiful, beautiful graph from that study. Also, Fox News has also put a lot of focus on young voters who the network claims are leaning towards Trump. I don't know if that's true, but we'll take that at their word. So according to the Kaiser Family Foundation for the 2020 election, voters aged 45 and older made up about 61% of the total votes cast, whereas younger voters under the age of 35 accounted for roughly 25%. Now, if you look at the actual numbers of human beings in these demographics, millennials at this point finally outnumber boomers. Gen X, we don't because we're shrunken. We're sandwiched in between two much larger generations. Now, this graph doesn't split the generations perfectly because ages 45 to 64 includes Gen X and boomers. But it does show that the trend of 45 and up, which would include most of Gen X into boomers, votes in the highest numbers. And women vote in the highest numbers. So the demographic that votes the highest in the United States are older women, if that's across all demographics racially. Black women also have great voter turnout. Black men don't as much. And that has to do partly due to the incarceration rate, and which is much higher among Black men due to a million reasons of our racist criminal justice system, systemic racism, and in states where felons cannot vote, that also affects the Black male vote. Some would say that's actually part of the design of not allowing felons to vote. That's a whole other podcast. But so finally, we're going to end it with Brian Kilmeade reducing January 6th to never a great day. Here we go. This is from Monday on Fox and Friends.
I thought about this. What bothers them most is that Trump is winning, more popular than ever before, despite their outrage, and they're trying to diminish him. And some things he'd made mistakes. January 6th, never a great day.
Yes, I would call it not a great day when the president and his supporters try to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power in a democracy. That's not a great day. And just as a quick reminder, and it's kind of a depressing episode, but I got to go with what they give me. Here we go. The people who died on January 6th, here's a quick reminder. These were all Trump supporters. Ashley Babbitt, this first group is Trump supporters. Ashley Babbitt shot by a Capitol Police officer as rioters tried to breach the House chamber. Kevin D. Greeson died of a heart attack. Rosen Boland died of an accidental acute amphetamine intoxication. Her death was initially believed to be caused by a stampede of other rioters. Benjamin Phillips died of a stroke. Again, these are Trump supporters who died during the riot. Over 140 officers, both Capitol Police and Metropolitan Police, were injured. Here's the officers who died. Officer Brian D. Sicknick died the day of the attack. He had multiple strokes that occurred hours after his confrontation with the mob. The medical examiner added, however, that all that transpired played a role in his condition. Officer Jeffrey Smith committed suicide soon after the attack. Officer Howard S. Liebengood committed suicide 4 days after the attack. Metropolitan Police Officer Gunther Hashida committed suicide in July of the same year, and Metropolitan Officer Kai D. Freytag committed suicide in July of the same year. Property damage to the U.S. Capitol. As of October 14, 2022, the approximate losses suffered as a result of the siege of the Capitol totaled $2.8 million. That amount reflects, among other things, damage to the Capitol building and grounds and certain costs borne by the U.S. Capitol Police. Rioters broke windows, doors, and furniture, while some smeared blood and feces around the building. Not a great day, Brian Kilmeade. Not a great day indeed. Now, I don't know if I have it in me. We're going to see if I have it in me. I recently did a media appearance with the folks at Resolute Square, and they all immediately asked me to do Judge Jeanine, and I had no voice. I could barely talk last week. So I'm going to try it, even on my voice that's not completely there. I'm already coughing. I'm Judge Jeanine. I have dogs. Have you met them? Okay, now I'm dying. It's killing me. It's killing me. I'm Judge Jeanine. So instead, I'll just do Kellyanne Conway real quick. I'll just do Kellyanne Conway. Alternative facts. See, that one's not difficult, my voice, because it's kind of whispery. It's kind of coquettish. I'm blonde, and I constantly look different depending on how much fillers I have in my face or Botox. And my hair, it's constantly changing. Is it baby fine today? Is it kind of messy? Is it big? Is it huge? Am I wearing a hairpiece? I don't know. All I know is he had alternative facts. I'm from New Jersey. So moving on to stories Fox News ignored. Every week I compare the stories I've watched on Fox News, the many hours I've watched on Fox News, to 5 hours of the PBS NewsHour. The following list are stories that PBS covered that Fox News did not. I did have to cut a couple of them due to length this week. So here we go. Starting with climate disasters. 3 people drowned and 134,000 people were affected by flooding caused by heavy rains in Sri Lanka. Rains and floods have damaged 240 houses and nearly 7,000 people have been evacuated. Authorities have cut electricity to some areas as a precaution. Updates in the war in Ukraine. The White House agreed to an additional $425 million in aid for Ukraine. It will provide Ukraine additional capabilities to meet its most urgent needs, including air defense capabilities, air-to-ground weapons, munitions for rocket systems and artillery, armed vehicles, and anti-tank weapons. Threats against FEMA workers have hampered relief efforts in North Carolina in areas affected by Hurricane Helene. Donald J. Trump has been one of the main sources of disinformation that has caused people to harass FEMA workers. China launched a series of military exercises around Taiwan in what it described as punishment for a speech given by its president, William Lai, when he vowed to resist annexation or encroachment upon our sovereignty. NASA's Europa Clipper has embarked on its long voyage to Jupiter, where it will investigate Europa, a moon with an enormous subsurface ocean that may have conditions to support life. The Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded to a trio of economists who have published research that looks at what accounts for inequality between countries and how the role of institutions, government, and colonialism affected prosperity generations later. Retail sales rose 0.4% in September, exceeding analysts' expectations. Initial unemployment claim filings totaled a seasonally adjusted 241,000, a decline of 19,000, and lower than the estimate for 260,000. Microsoft warned that Iran and Russia have increased cyber attacks against the U.S. and its allies. In New Mexico, migrant deaths have increased 10 times in recent years. Human smugglers are directing migrants to more dangerous border regions. North Korea blew up roads that connected North Korea to South Korea after warning it could completely cut ties with the South. Giant pandas have returned to the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. The pandas are loaned to the zoo as part of a new partnership with China. Boeing has made plans to raise as much as $25 billion in debt or equity, or a combination of both. The beleaguered company is currently struggling with a labor strike and production problems. A judge sentenced Robert Tellis, a former Las Vegas area politician, to 28 years in prison for killing an investigative journalist who wrote articles critical of his conduct in office 2 years ago and exposed an intimate relationship with a female co-worker. Italy's parliament made it illegal to seek surrogacy abroad. Activists say the legislation will make it more difficult for LGBTQ couples to become legal parents. A grand jury indicted Colin Gray and his son Colt on charges related to the mass shooting at Apache High School in Windsor, Georgia last month. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration launched an investigation into Tesla's full self-driving feature. The feature has been linked to 4 crashes, one of which resulted in the death of a pedestrian. Texas delayed the execution of Robert Robertson, who was convicted of murder due to a diagnosis tied to shaken baby syndrome. A bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers who believe he is innocent issued a subpoena for him to testify before a House committee, which halted his execution. Cuba is facing a nationwide blackout due to a failure at a power plant. The island country is currently facing its worst economic crisis in 30 years, marked by inflation and food shortages. In Italy, tens of thousands of auto workers have gone on strike in Rome to protest working conditions. It is the first national strike in the automobile industry in 20 years. Mitzi Gaynor, the actress and singer best known for the star of the 1958 film musical South Pacific, has died at the age of 93. She also starred in a series of Emmy-winning TV specials, and they are a hoot if you've never seen one. Lilly Ledbetter, a pioneer for equal pay for women, died at the age of 86. Ledbetter sued her employer, Goodyear, after she discovered she was being paid far less than her male counterparts for the same job. Her lawsuit paved the way for the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which was signed into law by President Barack Obama. And we move on to By the Numbers. Every week I compare the top 5 topics on Fox News to the top 5 topics on PBS. Here we go. Top 5 for Fox. Number 1, Kamala bashing at a whopping 33%. Trump 2024, which is when they blatantly promote him, that's 29%. Al Smith dinner, which Fox made out to be a very big deal, 6%. Harris versus Trump, that's just general talk of the election when they don't pick a side. Believe it or not, they do that. It's 5%. And 4%, the Israel-Hamas war. Moving on to PBS, Number 1, 21%, Israel-Hamas war. Harris versus Trump, which is a presidential election, 20%. Artist profile, 8%. Hurricane Helene aftermath, 5%. And a swing voters focus group, which was technically about the election, but it was kind of separate. I didn't know to conclude it. It was 5%. Next off was just author's profile anyway. So that's why I was like, I don't know. So words used on Fox for the week ending October 20th, 2024. Trump, 751. Staggering. Kamala, 419. Biden, 282. Border, 212. Economy, 78. Israel, 77. Crime, 63. Obama, 55. Inflation, 50. Polls, 47. Abortion, 24. Black voters, 23. Hillary, 20. Male voters, 12. Women voters, 3. That's very telling. AOC, 1. I should add, the number 6 category for Fox was trans panic. So even though it didn't seem like it was a big category, it just seemed odd that they were pushing it because it kind of seemed kind of forced, in my humble opinion. So that's the podcast. I still have a voice, but barely. I can tell it's going again. I got to stop talking. But anyway, thank you for listening. If you'd like to check out more of my work, you can go to Twitter, also known as X, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Blue Sky. I think I got them all. You can also, if you'd like to become a paid subscriber, I always need paid subscribers. It's amazing. I'm a little worried about what's going to happen with this election. What's going to happen to Decoding Fox News? If we lose this election, if Democrats lose this election, will everybody abandon this project? I don't know. I'm braced for impact. We'll see. I'm also terribly, terribly worried for the country if that happens. Horribly worried for this country if that happens. Difficulty to sleep right now with 2 weeks to go, especially watching this right-wing propaganda. Anyway, if you'd like to become a paid subscriber, please go to my Substack for Decoding Fox News, my Patreon for Decoding Fox News, or you can also go to my Venmo, which is in the linked tree at my Twitter bio. And that's about it. My podcast mascots, Odin and Thor, also send their love. And you can find a version of this podcast on the Resolute Square YouTube channel. And I will see you at the next podcast. Hopefully I will have my voice back. Thank you so much.
Resolute Square.